All right, let's get this show on the road, man. How you doing this week?
Yeah, it's been overall it's been a good week, and I'm really grateful. As I probably said the last show, 2025 has gotten off with a bang,
hmm
but I'm grateful. I'm grateful. How about yourself? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm staying busy. I'm really attacking this We the Sauce project hard right now. So I had a meeting with one of my friends yesterday who was kind of acting as a project manager for it. So just kind of helping me get some things organized. At the same time, I'm trying to add the functionality. So, there's a lot of things that I want to add to it. So, I want to try to add users to it and give them the ability to like, comment, and subscribe to stuff on the actual site. So, a lot of big changes are happening. So, Chat GPT, my best friend right now. So, I'm plugging things into there. And one thing I've learned with it is that, like, I've been almost a little bit too nice to it. Like, when I'm asking it questions, I'm like, oh, do you think you could? But in order to really get what you need out of it, you kind of just have to be really direct with it. I'm still kind of on be nice to the computers because they're gonna be they're gonna be in charge one day. But it's you have to be very direct with what you want because computers do exactly what you tell them to do. So if you're suggesting that they do something for you, then they'll give you a suggestion back, and it's a lot of that give and take, and just learning how to really communicate with it. So the more I use it, the better I think I get at it, and it's giving me more of what I ultimately need from it. So I've been experiencing a lot of good breakthroughs with it. So.
So I think there's a whole conversation in store just to talk about, and I know in one of our earlier sessions back in 24, you were talking about technology and really encouraging people to push in. There's a whole conversation surrounding the statement you made as far as the machines taking over. Of course, there's been a slew of movies starring people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and others that dealt with this idea of the machines taking over. And I agree with you. I think that we need to understand how to communicate with them. I was talking to a young man earlier, and he made the statement that he thinks we as humans have to get smarter as the technology becomes more intelligent. And one of the things that I was thinking about, one of my mentors was giving all these disclaimers before he started his show, his virtual show. Because as you know, unfortunately, thanks to the power of AI, and even I think I shared something with you involving some would say the late great, late only in terms of um, the fact that Kendrick has taken over, but the late great Drake. There was this video that was circulating with him rapping something really highly political, but it was purely an AI fabrication.
Mm,
But as my mentor was, sharing that all these sites have cropped up using his voice, that's not him, and it's apparently so easy to do by people who know how to do it that it's hard to keep up with it. So it seems like some people have given up trying to go against it because it's so easy to proliferate it. But I think that there's so many different aspects of this when you look at it from a law enforcement standpoint,
mm-hmm.
and people being able to impersonate the voice of others, and then you get into cloning and identity theft. It's just it's it's a little disconcerting, actually.
Yeah, there's um I I guess I kind of have a dystopian view on it to a degree. I'm of the belief that with the floodgates that we've already opened, it is kind of hard to turn back and like remove this technology. Like if you just look at how dependent we already are on our phones themselves, so it's like we've been weaned into it very slowly, but soon, once they start to say, well, in order to use your phone to its maximum ability, you'll have to get a little magnetic chip in your finger or something like that. We're really at that point in time already, and I think a lot of people didn't foresee that coming so soon, but we're really here, and it's just kind of when you're looking at the progression of technology and human civilization as a whole, like we're already kind of at the early stages of like transhumanism. Not to get too deep into that, but that's just like where I just kind of see things headed in term, like even within the next 10 to 20 years, honestly. When you see all of the robots that we have here, iRobot, we saw that. I don't even know exactly. I must have came out like maybe 2005,
I don't remember.
2006. It was like early 2000s, but 20 years later, where we have the robots about to be walking around. So there's really no telling, and I think everyone's best bet is to just kind of adapt as quickly as we can with it before it's taken over. Because the truth is, it's not even gonna take everybody becoming part cyborg. Not even to say like the full on cyborg, but just as we strive as humans to live longer, as technology advances, we see that, oh, this is gonna add another 50 years to your life if you were on your deathbed. And then so it's just gonna start making the most sense for people to just be like, okay, well, if I was gonna take some medicine and this is gonna negate me having to take medicine, then just kind of easing us into it like that. So like I said, not to get too dystopian on this channel early. So I just see a lot of changes coming in the very near future, and just for people to be prepared for it. But I think what I was in the process of saying was only a few people even need to take that step in terms of like whether it's integrating the little brain chip into it, and then what happens is those few people who have access to that computing power now are out, like they're a class above regular humans because they can compute things faster. They may have some physical advantages at that point, so we really don't know what all of that entails. And but that's gonna mark the beginning of the change. So I don't want to.
So you said a mouthful, and I can't let a couple of things you said go past, because when you talked about people living longer, of course, we know that folks have been seeking to tap into the fountain of youth for the longest.
Mm-hmm.
And the book that I like to read says that things will go back to the way they were in the beginning. Well, in the beginning, people lived, 700, 800 years. And in fact, biologists would tell you that if you really look at the way the human body was designed, with, with cells being able to replenish themselves, we weren't really designed to die.
Mm.
That's just something that happened through the way that we took care of the external forces. I'll
Right.
just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting though is that I think with technology, people are figuring out how to stay on the planet even longer. Something else you said too that's interesting about this idea of just a few needing to be tapped in technologically, and I didn't expect to go in this direction so early, But there's been a lot of talk about Elon Musk
Mm-hmm.
and the Department of Government Efficiency.
Right.
And with you being a tech guy, I don't know if now I hadn't really taken the time to dig in much, but of course, well, just about anything that Elon does these days is going to raise some concern.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding was that he recruited 4 young engineers to help him to figure out how efficient or inefficient the government had been performing in the areas that the president assigned him to check out. And these guys happen to be whizzes with technology. And the level of inefficiency that they've been able to unearth at this point has everything to do with these 4 very talented engineers who one of them they were saying if and you know about coding and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember verbatim exactly what was said, but it was something to the effect that if something got if the coding of a particular program got totally scrambled up, he would be able to put it back together within a night and they would be operational again. Now, of course, we're talking about somebody that's on an elite level with the technology.
Mm-hmm.
But that's disconcerting for some because if it only takes a few, then what happens to those people who aren't doing their due diligence to just be able to do some of the fundamental stuff? Like, you were just talking about the GBT chat,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, that concerns me whether or not people, especially those people who are just entering the workforce or not out of high school yet, whether they're doing enough to make it to survive.
If we kind of look at it from that perspective, it's already most jobs today that are even paying well are very inefficient, and they wouldn't even need most of the people. Like, I don't want I don't want to say it, but most of the people at my job wouldn't be needed if they taught AI how to do the things. So I think we're getting to the point where if we're removing inefficiency, then the only thing that would make sense would be to remove the humans from a lot of these positions. And with that's just the current trend of things. Like, we're seeing all these jobs being removed from government, but then that's just kind of asking, okay, what's left for us if we're letting robots then run everything, or just artificial intelligence run everything? Then what do humans become at that point? Because if you think about, there probably is enough land to um, grow enough food to stop world hunger at this point. You feel me? That's inefficiency on humans' perspective. Like, and that's because we have capitalism where we're charging for, where they get us focusing on purchasing the wrong things necessarily. Like,
Charging us for water.
exactly. So there's so much things that we would be able to afford if we were living more efficiently, or if there was, like, I guess, some type of perfect idea or some type of utopia. I think people believe that that would be achievable if you let enough robots into the certain places. So with the increase of efficiency, then yeah, people don't have to work as much, but then it becomes the question of what does that leave for humans, because we'll no longer be the people who are running the world at that point. Then it would be on to the robots. So that's where it's the question of, do we join with the robots, or do we become part of it, or is that the next step of our evolution, so to say, in the world? So there's just a lot of questions that are left unanswered as we, like, journey into this next phase of the human era.
So I would be remiss if I didn't say this because one of the main reasons why I do this is because I'm always trying to give the next generation a heads up. So I was very happy to share with one of the young women in in my neighborhood that it just so happens that in my neighborhood there are literally three gas stations right across from each other. You got one here, one
Mm-hmm.
across the street, and one across the one that I'm about to make mention of. And I usually kind of go out of my way to support this one gas station because the young black woman who mans the register is always so personable, kind, and efficient. And so now, of course, we know that we can always count on machines usually to be efficient. But if you're looking for a gentle touch, if you will, then that's now, of course, with virtual reality, we're finding out that soon, that even will be challenged, because people are figuring out how to do all the most interesting things using virtual reality these days.
Mm-hmm.
But where I'm going with this is that for those people who are still in the workforce, especially if you're customer facing, be kind, be personable, because that's one of the things that you still have to your advantage that the machine can't quite du- duplicate yet. Human timing is not something the machine has been able to duplicate yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge comes in where you've got a human in a position who's not very efficient, has no personality, doesn't seem to want to be there. Now you've given whoever's the manager, or let alone the person who owns the place, no reason to keep you because it's very difficult to be more efficient than the machine if they're thinking about replacing the human with. So we have to figure out ways to become as irreplaceable as we can. And that's one of the ways. But anyway, I just have to say that because it pains me, especially when I go into retail establishments where I know that that person who's working the cash register is just not thinking clearly because they've already got self checkout lines. So if you don't prove that there's a need for you to man this register, then they'll replace somebody that they feel will give the human touch better than you, or they'll just shut that register down for people and go virtual, go with a kiosk.
Yeah, I think as we hit inflation, the problem is what people are willing to pay for that cashier. That cashier doesn't want to work for that money anymore because it's not enough for them to survive. So, we're reaching that point to where the the positions that we are aiming to replace with technology are the ones that people don't want in the first place because people, you're standing on your feet all day, and like teachers is one of the ones where it's going to be very hard to replace, but at the same time teachers don't the people don't want to pay teachers, but that could be a possible thing that comes out of it to where we're able to invest more in teachers and just kind of help people. I'm trying to be a little bit more optimistic about things, but because right now teachers I think are in such a terrible predicament with low wages and having to deal with all of so much stress. Like it's not even. I've taught kids, just really out of the kindness of my heart, not necessarily for the paycheck. And I was like, there's really not even amount of money that I could do that for. Even if I was getting paid what I was getting paid at my job, I would not choose to be a teacher. And I love kids as well. Like interacting and teaching kids, but like that's something that I actually enjoy doing. But when you think about the responsibility that's on them, the amount of work that they have to put in outside of school hours, they have to be in one place, for the whole. It's You're acting as a counselor, you're acting as a disciplinarian. There is not enough money that you can realistically pay teachers for it to be worth their while moving forward. And as people are growing up and seeing other job opportunities, it's like everyone is going to abandon that, and that's going to leave our kids to suffer. So that would be the best case scenario. If we're saving money on everything else, then we have to invest it in the actual human aspect of teaching and passing down the proper information to help people adapt to this new world that we're about to be in.
So, as somebody who's young and hip and in the technology field, we already agreed we were going to deal with current events, and we've already started that when I brought up Musk and Dove,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. One of the things that you also may have heard some rumblings about, because actually this was something that the president talked about when he was on his campaign trail,
Mm-hmm.
was the idea of getting rid of the Department of Education.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how much you know about all of that. Now, what I probably said in the previous show, and something that is that I'm a former classroom teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So what you were saying was spot on in terms of what they pay teachers in the United States, and just to respect that we as educators, I mean, I'm still an educator, just not in the traditional classroom,
Mm-hmm.
what we get when, as compared to the way that they treat and pay educators in other parts of the world relative to other professions. So hopefully people will be impacted by what you said. Here, you somebody that actually enjoys working with young people and would probably be somebody that the school system would be seeking to teach computers.
Mm-hmm.
But you made a big statement. You said that no amount of money that they would offer would get you to do that on a full-time basis. So,
Nope.
from your vantage point, because I know you've had to have thought about this, what are some things that you think could be done to tweak the system? And I'm asking you this from an outside view. I'm not expecting you to speak as an expert,
Mm-hmm.
as somebody that's actually been inside the system, but as somebody that went to school, because you did you did go to school in the system for years. So, what are some things that you think could possibly be done differently that could maybe change the system around?
Um, I would say we would need to shrink the classroom sizes a little bit. I think because just a little bit. I haven't taught in a traditional classroom. I've done a couple of after school programs and some summer programs where I was working with kids. Um, but I was at a program where the kids were being paid to come there. So it's like, they had a little bit more of an incentive. They weren't getting paid very much, but, just the idea of them kind of earning some money. So I was teaching them just general things they could do on the computer, a little bit of AI, which a lot of them knew already. Like the thing is, a lot of these kids know, they knew almost as much as I did in terms of just like tools to use. Maybe not exactly how to use them to their full extent, but they knew how to use PowerPoint, Microsoft Office, all of that things that you would need in order to thrive in any type of work environment. So it's not that these kids aren't learning the tools that they need to and the skill sets that they need in order to thrive in these positions. It's just the fact that they really don't need to focus on it because they don't see any benefit coming from it. So when I was in those classrooms, it wasn't too difficult to get them. Like, you could keep their attention for a couple of minutes. I was only in there for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, or maybe some. There was one situation where it would be like an hour. The other one was like a 2 to 3 hour class. So you're in there for a short period of time, and it's like you have to keep their attention. But it's like if it's something that they already know how to do, then they're just like, okay, once I finish it, can I go play games? And so they can do the work quickly and efficiently. So I didn't have any problems getting them to do the work, but it's just like, okay, now I have to entertain them or find something else for them to do for the rest of this time period. And you want to make it productive, but at the end of the day, they just want to play games. So, and I think when you have so many kids, it's like, okay, everyone's working at different speeds. So it's like some kids you have to give a little bit more attention to. Other kids are finished in the first 5 minutes and are now playing games. And now the other kids who stuck on is like, well, I just want to play games. And so then they give up on trying to complete the task or something like that. So those are some of the things I ran into.
So do you think that because of course some educators have been looking at ways of integrating gaming as a method of educating. And
Mm-hmm.
so it makes me wonder just hearing that feedback. And of course, even when I was in the classroom, there was technology that was being created to integrate this interest that young people have in playing games and directly and indirectly get the information to them in that form. Um, I guess there's a lot of subjects that would lend itself to that. I'm not sure if all subjects would allow. Obviously, math provides a lot of opportunity for gaming and education, and subjects like geometry. So there are certain subjects that readily lend itself. Do you think that since a lot of these young people were so interested in gaming, and so you also integrated an important piece, and that's the incentive piece. So the fact that they were being paid, albeit a small amount, that's called an incentive.
Right.
And so part of the challenge with modern day education is outside of the fact that the law mandates that they go to school, and this altruistic idea that, well, I need to get an education so I can get a career or get a job in the future. I wonder if we need to have more incentives all along the path and then figure out how to use the activities that they actually enjoy as a way to keep them interested and curb misbehavior. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that part of the reason why you said they couldn't pay you enough has nothing to do with your ability to do it from an intellectual standpoint. It has more to do with the management of, of students once they decide that they're disinterested, or they start
Mm-hmm.
performing outside of what you came there to teach them.
Well, real quick, I think an idea when we think of the years that we are in school. I forgot I was having this conversation with somebody, but like currently, if you look at the dating market and how difficult it is for people to afford to be able to go on a date. So if we're looking at the average salary of a lot of people and how much they're expected to have in order to traditionally have a family, um, at the rate at which people start actually earning money, and the age that they're expected to start having children, all of those ages are going up. Like, the average age of marriage, the average age of having kids, all of those are going up. Um, and we're in this, and it's because a lot of people are starting after college. If you start making money after college and then you are coming out to kind of a base salary that's not very much more than if you were working that whole time, now you're paying back your debts. It's like now you really don't have enough money or time in order to really start that process of your life. So we're taking, I think, so much when we look at just kids, and when we used to complain about early pregnancy rates, it's like kids are starting to enter that phase of their life so early in their teen years, and then they have like, boys are starting to like girls at the age of 13, of course younger, but I'm just using that as just an example. It's like this is when that aspect of things start. So it's like that's really the only reason boys are interested in going to school, girls are interested to go into school, to see each other. So it's like as society kind of has, if you remove that incentive, then they're really not going at, they wouldn't want to go at all. So when we're removed, we've pushed back the time to where, like, what would the appropriate age for people to get married and start, just doing adult things has been moved so far up that during those years between 13 and 18, that's when a lot of that disinterest starts to set in, and there's really no more motivation. But they're, if they were starting to make money at that point, they could start making decisions. And I'm not advocating for child labor or anything. I'm just saying that if we're looking from it from a philosophical point, that is a cause of a lot of the fall. Like that's a very big drop off rate in that age range. And it's because, I guess, back in the day, I don't exactly know when people were not going to school until 18, or they weren't necessarily forced to go to school till 18. Different outcomes were happening. So
You know what you just said, and I've over my career I've worked at schools that didn't have a uniform policy and schools that did have a uniform policy. What you said about the motive for a lot of young teens to go to school, it makes a lot of sense because I was listening to a famous divorce attorney. I don't recall his name at the moment.
mhm.
And he was saying that for men, men spend their life ultimately seeking to do one thing, seeking to be attractive to a woman.
Right.
And so if you really boil it down, okay, why is he driving this car? Oh, because he why is he want to earn this amount of money so that he can, well, if that's true, if the divorce attorney is right, then we back it up to school days, and that same guy was once in what we call middle school now
Hmm.
with the same objective.
Right.
Now you put him in a uniform. Well, now when we go back to the whole concept of incentive, you've now taken away one of his big incentives for going to school because part of, and growing up in a big city, the dress had a lot to do with why people even wanted to go to school, to show off
Hmm.
their Jordans, to show off their jeans. So when you
Fashion.
put them in a uniform, yes, from the standpoint of the schoolhouse administrators, it makes sense to put them in a uniform because somehow that is supposed to help to create more uniformity, discipline, but yet it de-incentivizes them as far as their one of their main motivations for going to school. So you raise a good point, and when you were saying what you said about the interest in boy and girl and all that kind of stuff, immediately I thought about the uniform thing and incentive. So
Hmm. Even in Fresh Prince, remember he Will Smith, he was at a school and he had to make it his own. So it's like that would he the first couple of days in school he switched his uniform inside out. So it stood out. So that used to be fashion, your sense of style. That was all things that you had a chance to showcase when you went to school, which was part of the incentive. And at the programs I was at, that was still the driving. The kids would come in with their new Jordans. Well, they wouldn't even necessarily have new Jordans, but their version of their best fit, and be wanting to get compliments, or going to the pencil sharpener to just show off the just different things that would make them stand out. And that's, I think, a lot of times we forget that kids start that, they want to start the show out. They have motivations earlier on in life than we're kind of allowing them to showcase that. So when these kids are growing up and they don't have enough money to date, but they're still trying to date. Like, that was, I used to have to get my parents to give me money to go to the movies, but I wasn't, I might have to do some chores for that, but that was worth it in order to, go and try and take out the girl that I liked at that time. Or even just go and hang out with my friends in order to go meet new girls and stuff like that. So those were different incentives, and school was the main focus for that. But now we also add the fact that everything is moving online, so it's like now you're not really just you're not confined to just meeting people within your school district. You can meet people online. You meet them in video game chat rooms and this, that, and the third. So when you expand that, it makes school even less interesting. So it's like kids can be at school, be home all day and still, get that same dopamine rush by playing the game or interacting with their friends online.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It makes me also think about. Um, so you mentioned you think that the class sizes should be smaller. What about the length of the school day?
Very much shorter. um, Because real honestly, these kids are really smart enough to do, like, I can't even express how smart some of these kids are at this point in time. Like, although technology has advanced and these kids have advanced just as quick, they can use the same. They can use a lot of these tools better than their parents. So they're more efficient than their parents. They could realistically, if given the right incentives, take over their parents' positions right now in a lot of situations. And if it was, of course, not having the proper communication skills to do certain things. But if we're just talking about the day-to-day tasks that a lot of people do in corporate America, in terms of like sending emails and connect doing small tasks and stuff, like a lot of these kids are technologically advanced enough to handle a lot of those tasks. Um, so I think when you take that into account, you are wasting their time by trying to teach them the math equation by hand when they know how to calculate everything with their phones. It's like we used to always say, yeah, and don't get, I definitely understand, excuse me, having the knowledge behind a lot of the equations that we have and the calculations that we do, but we're really at the point now where, yeah, you can plug a lot of things into Chat GPT instantly, like even quicker than you would have to if somebody asked you 12 times 12. You can do that. Yeah, you might know that off the top of your head, but it's just as simple to pull out your phone and ask Siri what's 12 times 12. So it's like we're kind of almost at that point where the basic things that we used to really harper down on kids learning and being, it's like that's almost obsolete at this point. And it's like they're still able to do it, like they know the basics behind it, but what's the importance of them really knowing how to do the times tables by off of memory.
But you in this conversation, for people who will listen to this later, if your theory is correct, then what you have done is explain why there's an aspect of traditional school that will probably remain because of the social aspect, because of the idea of boys wanting to be in the same room with a girl and experience that energy. Because of course, you know that a lot of things are moving online, and there are people like the you know Elon Musk of the world who might tell you, hey, we actually don't need a physical school. In fact, he may be, now of course I'm speculating,
Mm-hmm.
but he might be the person saying to the president, hey, we don't need all these buildings filled up with kids. COVID proved that we can do it virtually and save a boatload of money. But part of the challenge that I think we're already seeing with how heavy the concentration has been on the technology, I think that there's a certain level of lacking when it comes to social skills
Mm-hmm.
that our young people are dealing with and facing. So maybe, maybe the present day school should figure out a better way to address the areas that can't be addressed as well using technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, we can table this particular conversation, but the reason why we delved into it is because this is one of the things the president has said he's going to deal with, and a lot of people just as concerned as people are about what's going on with the federal government. Well, of course, he hasn't gotten up to it yet, but that's on the agenda to be done with the Board of Education, which means a lot of people are about to be out of work
Right.
all over the country. So I think that it's going to take young minds like yours and mine to figure out some creative ways to address an issue. And I'm going to make this last point because some would argue that, well, Frank, you're a product of the school system, so how can you, and then you were a part of it. Yeah, but when you look at the system as a whole, it's kind of like having a vehicle, and this is fresh on my mind because I've had a vehicle recently to give me all kinds of trouble. And the question might be, well, as long as it's, getting you down the road, and that may that may be a good position to take if you don't have far down the road to get.
Mm-hmm.
But if a vehicle starts off operating at 90% efficiency, for a lot of people, that's that's already problematic. And then you get down to 80%. By the time it gets down to 50% efficiency, at some point, it's not going to get down the road at all because it's too far below efficiency. Or if it gets down the road, then we have to put out 50% of the passengers so that it can get down the road. And so 50% of the passengers didn't get down the road at all. And so the argument for a lot of people was that, you know, we've been, in fact, in our country, education is one of the highest funded. But the question is where those funds delineated.
Right.
So we've got to, you know, when we look at what's happening with Asia alone and how their students seem to be, as an aggregate, beating us. You know, this is a issue that needs to be addressed. But anyway, enough about that. Obviously, as an educator, I can talk about that for a long, long time, but we don't want to continue to deal with that topic.
Right. Well, one last thing on that. If we think about where the origins of the school system came from, it's 8 hours to kind of cover up the fact that parents were at work for 8 hours. So as things kind of move away from, if things become more efficient and people aren't at work all the time, then, you know, we can see it as reclaiming time with our families, reclaiming time with our children if we want to be optimistic about it. So I just wanted to leave on a little bit more positive of a note, so it's not as dystopian as, you know, we could get thinking about just the technology and stuff. So there's always some silver lining. You know, if your kids aren't in school, then hopefully that means that you get to work from home too, or, you know, don't have to be away from home as much, which I think ultimately that's the direction I think most corporations, America kind of as a whole wants to head in. So that was just my last little piece.
Well, to sort of swing in a different direction, a lot of people watch the Super Bowl for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some people only watch the Super Bowl for the halftime show.
Right.
And it doesn't, you know, for years. I've known people that they don't watch the game, they watch the halftime show.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other people who are there for the party, for the food, for the pizza, and the commercials.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I, of course, off camera already made mention of two of the things that we wanted to talk about. And in our last show, we spent quite a bit of time talking about Ye. And little did we know when we were doing that show 2 weeks ago that Ye was going to give us another reason.
The next day.
The
next day.
Which I think is part of what Ye likes to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, that was part of the reason why he decided to step out with his wife in that very interesting fashion. So for those people who are in the dark, Ye had a commercial during the Super Bowl and decided to feature a swastika on a piece of apparel. And of course, there was a lot of uproar surrounding that. And as a hip hop guardian, of course, I wanted to get your thoughts, and you know what are your thoughts?
Okay, so there was a lot that had happened, cause I guess we did ours before the Grammys. I guess it was the Saturday or the Thursday or Wednesday right before the Grammys had came on.
So I think we did our last show before the Super Bowl.
It was definitely before the Super Bowl.
After the Grammys, I think, because remember, Ye had already stepped out on the red carpet with his wife before we did our show.
Okay.
Because that came up on the last show. But
okay.
So after, if I remember correctly, we did it after the Grammys
and before the Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I didn't remember if we had actually talked about his wife stepping out there
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
that was
Okay.
how he came up the last show.
Okay. I just remember we started talking about fashion, but
Yeah, that's how he came up.
okay, got you. So prior to that, he was on Twitter, so or X as they like to formerly known as Twitter. He was on that platform doing a series of tweets. So he was tweeting. He was tweeting for like maybe 24 hours straight. Oh, the night I think after that, because I know I talked to somebody who was watching this live. He was like, "Oh yeah, did you see what after?" He was like, "After you said that about yeah," then he was tweeting that like all night. So from the time we hung up last night to today, Ye has been on a tweeting frenzy because he was off the platform for a couple of months prior to that, and then he just decided to reactivate it and kind of send everything into a whole frenzy. So I'm trying to remember what his first couple of tweets were because the Super Bowl came. Like I said, I think he had started tweeting that like Thursday night, Friday morning, something like that. And this is before he even dropped the Super Bowl ad. He deleted that. All of the tweets are deleted now, but it was. I'm trying to think of like what the first most controversial thing he was saying. Of course, he was bringing up a lot of the anti-Semitic stuff, but he was talking more from a perspective of like, oh yeah, they stopped me once, and I had to, I had to chill. Now he was kind of treating like his I guess whole mantra was that he's uncancelable now, or he's unable to be stopped, and he can say whatever he wants. So he kind of just went on a whole tweeting the first thing that came to his mind. So he's talking about fat people, Jewish people, black people, just saying everything. He was talking about Diddy. He brought up some very interesting things about the idea of, he was like, Diddy's in jail right now, and Kendrick Lamar is on the stage of the Super Bowl. So it was kind of more about, and I think that was because, according to the Drake beef with Kendrick and Drake, Kendrick had some domestic violence issues with his wife, allegedly. So he was kind of pointing out the hip hop or the selective outrage people have when it came to that. And he was saying,
Interesting.
yeah, he was saying Kendrick needed to say free Diddy on the Super Bowl on the Super Bowl thing. So yeah, I think trying to dissect all of every, because he was tweeting a lot. Like it was 24 hours of him just tweeting everything that could come to his mind. So I'm just gonna focus on the Super Bowl. I was just trying to give a little bit of context to um, what was going on prior to the Super Bowl dropping.
Okay, before you address that,
Mhm.
let me ask this burning question because of course with celebrities, we know that in many instances they're not managing their social media. So
Right.
do you believe that this is really Ye saying this, or is this?
100%. Ain't no question that that was Ye. There's no question. There is no question that that was. And the thing is, a lot of people, I don't know how I feel about when people call him crazy. Like, I think he does, like, I don't think he's ever unknowledgeable of what he's doing, good, bad, or indifferent. I like, because sometimes when I see people blame certain things that he says on him being bipolar or just write it off as crazy, it's not to say that what he said wasn't crazy, but it's just to say not every time somebody says something, I think that he's within his. I wouldn't give that a pat, like saying that, oh, you can just write off anything that he says because see someone's crazy. Like, I think that's what that kind of lends to when people put that. It's like, oh, he's just crazy. He's just, it's like, no, that's, I think he's within his he's within his right mind of whatever he's at that moment. He said that he wasn't. He was like, this time I'm not on any alcohol, or it might. There's rumors right now that he's on some laughing gas or something allegedly. So whatever. But I just always feel like people people say things like that to hide the fact that, because they can't stand that somebody might actually have opinions like that. Um, because once again, I said this before. There's no one who I 100% agree with in the world. Like, we're not all forced to think the same. We're not forced to have the same values. So it's just like, if somebody's values aren't in line with yours, or somebody's ideas aren't in line with yours, that does not make them crazy or insane. That just makes them having a different perspective. Now, everything that we've been taught up until, to this point is, okay, this is good, this is bad. If you say this, then that's bad. But if you say this is okay. So it's really holding up a mirror to what we kind of deem as acceptable and what's unacceptable to say. And I think if you were to ask me what I thought the point of all those tweets was, it was pushing the boundaries of seeing what is allowed to be said and what's not allowed to be said. Because at the end of the day, it's still words, tweets, but the same thing with music. A lot of music is words, lyrics, and it's like we allow some crazy things to be said, and we hear a lot of crazy things on rap music where we've heard some very disrespectful, we've heard racist things, we've heard just everything that you can think of on rap songs or just music in general, not to just single rap out. But it kind of shows where our tolerance are, and the what we've kind of been taught to react strongly to, and what we've been taught to kind of let, or things that we've become just so desensitized to that we don't even give it a second thought. So through all of his tweets, there was a lot of to me it seemed like his aim was to offend someone in every sector, whether it be someone in the LGBTQ, people who are overweight, Jewish people, black people, white people. So just kind of aim.
Everybody.
That was his aim. So it was just to be, how offensive can I be, and how much am I able to get away with. So that was more of what I took away from that, and then that leads into the the Super Bowl commercial, because he's always had his own well, not always, but he's recently, since he left Adidas, has been selling his own apparel through Yeezy.com. So his website, where he had real clothes. I've purchased things off of there before. And actually, I had something, I ordered something weeks before he just started going on his tweeting episode. I don't know if I'll get it now, but because I was like I think I ordered it back in January. So yeah, I don't know if that's still coming or not, but he did have real apparel on it. And so when he first started tweeting, everyone was like, oh, he's got another album coming, or he's just trying to sell things on here. And then he was like, well, all of this negative stuff really, and then he showed he sold like $800,000 worth of merchandise in one day from after all of that tweeting and stuff. And then you would think that he had paid the Super Bowl, because he did that last year. He had a Super Bowl commercial where he just said, he was like, yeah, I spent all my money on just trying to get the ad space. So I didn't have any money for the production. So he just took a video on his phone and was like, yeah, go to Yeezy.com. So it was like a troll in that sense. And so he did the same thing again. And then this time he took off all of the other he took off all of the other clothes, and he had a actual collection. Everything was $20 there. So he had shoes on there, $20, or not sneaker shoes, but like slippers on there, hoodies, sweatpants, sweatshirts, jackets. So but everything on there was $20 flat. So you can get, three things, you'd be $60, and then you pay like shipping, which was like $15. So you could get some really, and it was, the stuff that, because like I said, I purchased some things off of there, so it was quality stuff for a very affordable price. So I could see how he was able to do those numbers, because somebody go on there and then you'll be able to get five things for $100, as opposed to what people are used to getting, spending $100 for one thing. And especially when it comes to name brands. So I think his play to then take everything off and then just have this one offensive piece of clothing on there was just a very big troll. And yeah, they took the Shopify, um, discontinued the store. So I mean, now the Yeezy.com is shut down from the Shopify platform. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But actually, even some more, um, what's it called? Some new news on that today is today. Now he's tweeting because he did at one point while he was on his Twitter rant tweet I'm a Nazi. So, but today he had tweeted after further. Let me actually pull up the tweet so I'm not misquoting it. But he was like, after further reflection or something like that. Let me see. I'm gonna read it out directly. See, he came up with another tweet 22 minutes ago. That's the you never know with this guy. He said, "Okay, after further reflection, I've come to the realization that I am not a Nazi." He said, he said, "Adam Sandler, thank you for the love." And he's just, like I said, he's tweeting a lot of things that just kind of comes directly to his head, which you know, that's what he's always done. I mean, I think like we said last time, he's built his brand off of saying things that other people don't want to say or afraid to say or know not to say. And I think he's pushing the limits on what he can do, especially now that he feels that he's somebody who is independent of that type of control and censorship. So,
Well, I didn't even bother to listen to the commentary. I only saw a blurb by Stephen A. Smith,
mm-hmm,
and of course, whenever I see someone in sports, which of course we know Stephen has sought to branch out, but we know him primarily for sports. But it makes me think about the show we did where we showed the intersection between hip hop and sports, particularly the NBA.
mm-hmm,
And I just saw a blurb from Stephen A. Smith in reference to Ye and that whole situation and advising him to, just quit, just stop. And ultimately, I do believe that in his mind, he seeks to push the boundaries of speech, but I also agree and think you did a good job of making it clear that he doesn't get a pass because at some point he has stated that he struggles with mental wellness. One of the things we know is true is that because of the immense wealth that he has, he can put support systems in place so that he can push the boundaries of free speech in a more responsible way. It's that whole question whether or not one should have the right, if they so choose, to scream fire in a crowded theater. Of course not. Well, to to choose that particular image and decide that that would be what he would use to push the limits on his free speech, it's in my view, there's a level of irresponsibility there. So my hope is, yes, that he continues to push the boundaries. However, do so in a way that, uh, because here's the thing, in order for him to have the level of brand that he has people across the globe that is embracing his brand.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody that likes to champion young people, I have to believe that there's some young people who like his music, like his Yeezy slides, who were deeply offended by his choice of pushing the boundary in the way that he did. So that's that's all I'm going to say to that. And people go through their own phases of maturity, and my hope is that he'll come off of that. And I would hate to think, now, of course, we know that pharmaceuticals and so many other entities in a capitalist system, which is to the point that you were raising earlier about capitalism. I would hope that he would not strive to be a ruthless capitalist, because I subscribe to compassionate capitalism. You can do well without doing bad. Now, of course, there's some who would say there's no such thing as doing good and being a capitalist. I disagree with that. And there are plenty of examples to the contrary. But um, to make those statements and be able to do the level of sales that he did, because agreeing with you, he had to know, because as somebody with some knowledge of marketing, he's very smart, and he had to know that he was going to do some serious sales, uh, because people gravitate to negative. That's part of it, and actually, unfortunately, he also knows that in his industry, part of the reason why he famously said that he didn't expect Jesus walk to chart and all the things that he said in that song is because he knows that there's this love for negative that a lot of people have, and so many of the record companies would rather push gun violence and naked chicks than some of the some of the work by your favorite artist,
Mm-hmm.
underground, with his work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So I just think that Kanye, especially speaking to it from the standpoint of me being a Christian, and him at one point having Sunday service and all of that. I think that he also should do better in that respect as somebody that had one time made people think he was serious about reconciliation. So how can he be serious about reconciliation and at the same time, you know, pimp the pimp the public in the way that he did with that particular image?
Do everything. Yep.
Profiteering. Yeah.
Yeah, he posted some pornographic images on his thing on his thing as well. Like it's like, yeah, I don't know Kanye personally at all to condemn or defend him. Um, I see, I look at the patterns of things, and for me, it's a easy pattern to track from back in the day when anything that is acceptable, he's gonna try and do the opposite of that if we're just following the trend of what he does. So nothing of it really necessarily surprised me. I actually wanted to read some of the tweets that he tweeted today. So one about 4 hours ago, he said, "We're taught racism and then told not to be racist." And then he said, "There are a lot of black people who have public platforms that are not allowed to fully express themselves, but I can and I do." So for us, from the past couple of, because there's certain things that he says where I'm like, okay, I know where he got that information from, whether it's from a reading, from a documentary. There's certain things. So there's certain things that I think allow me to personally be like, well, I don't believe he's lost all, or I don't necessarily see the bigger picture, but there's certain, when I know that people have certain information, then I know, because I know what certain information that I've come across at times. And actually, this was a conversation I used to have with my parents, because there was some very disturbing information that I came across. And I was, it's not like, sometimes it's not ready for everybody to know at a particular time. And there was one instance where I came across some information that I believe to be true, and I didn't know what to do with that information. I didn't know how to express it, how to feel about it. And at one point, I could recognize that with certain things that Ye was going through, in terms of when he was speaking about the abortion stuff, when he had the breakdown on TMZ. Um, but I had known, because I had came across that information in which he was referring to a couple of years prior. But it was something that I was like, I don't think people are ready to have those conversations. And it's like, I don't have a big enough platform to talk about it, or to feel that I'm hiding anything, or not being forthcoming with certain information. So I kind of look at it when, excuse me, you have a certain level of a platform, and you're holding in certain information that you feel the masses do need to know to some degree. What level can you contain that to where you feel that you're being real with yourself and you're not hiding certain things? So that's what I'll say about certain things, when I think he's trying to get out certain information in a more artistic way. And that's because he's not coming out and directly saying a lot of the things, but he's framing things in a way that makes people, that's shifting people's thinking. And I think that is the mark of an artist right there. So that's all that I'll say about that, because I think it goes deeper than that, but at the same time, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know him personally, but just different Easter eggs that I'm able to pick up on due to, previous readings, previous documentaries that I've watched. I'm kind of understanding the maybe the end goal message, or because it's really trying to break people out of a certain way of thinking. Although it may be shock therapy, it's I think we'll start to see if it's working or not, and if he'll survive, because he's moving into very dangerous territories. Like people always talk about when you tell the truth, or when you do certain things, is things end up happening. So we've seen it in the past, um, and for different reasons. So I'm not the one to say or to know. I'm just pure speculation. So
So um, I'm not sure if I've left you enough time to deal with it, or maybe so, because I'm sure it's been so well talked about. But I feel like your audience, with Weeder Sauce in particular, would like to get some thoughts from you about Kendrick's Super Bowl performance, considering all the talk that we've shared on this platform leading up to the Super Bowl and Kendrick and the back and forth between Kendrick and Drake. So,
hmm
what's your take on the performance? What's your feedback on the performance? I guess I should frame it that way.
I think the performance did what it was supposed to do. It's caused a lot of conversation. It's caused people to look a lot deeper into the music, into just different references that he was using. So that's the bag that I love about just hip hop poetry. How many double entendres can you have within how much information can you pack into a Super Bowl performance? So the fact that so many people have to go back and rewatch it, digest it again, kind of pick out these Easter eggs here and there. I think that's fantastic. I think that I think it's a good, like, it's hard for me to say it's a good thing for hip hop, because of just where my feelings are for hip hop as a whole are. Um, he was the first solo rapper to do a performance there, so that's big, and it did the biggest numbers. So commercial wise, that's great for hip hop, great for rap. So it's moving things in a positive direction. Especially for rap with substance, and not just being something about I just about girls and all of that. So even though it wasn't, he kept it pretty light in terms of some of the other records that he has. So he kept it entertaining to a degree. I think some people, that's still a little bit too preachy for some people's liking, especially when it comes to football game, and considering that type of audience. But I definitely think he was more aiming towards having a conversation with Black America. Um, and I think it kind of comes from stemming from when we were talking about the direction of hip hop, whether it be following the likes of Drake or following the likes of Kendrick, because Drake had dropped his, well, he had Party Next Door, which is one of Drake's artists, and Drake had dropped the collab album the following on Valentine's Day, called Some Sexy Songs for You. And a lot of the messaging in that album was, definitely towards, the playboy lifestyle that, we've already said that Drake has, which, the music itself, he has some good music on there. It's I still, I was just at my sister had a birthday party. We was playing a lot of Drake music, definitely more Drake music than than Kendrick Lamar. But that was the environment. She's turning 27, had a whole bunch of her girlfriends over there, and some guys. So it made more sense to play Drake. So it's not necessarily so much to the music or quiet. It's always a time and a place for different vibes. So I think a lot of people would argue that the deepness of Kendrick's music, it wasn't the time and place for the Super Bowl. But some people feel that, yeah, you need to have those moments of uncomfortability when it comes to getting a message across. So I think for the conversation that he was trying to have with Black America, I think that was the right place. I wouldn't have even. I barely turned on the game until I found out that it was free on Tubi. So my sister told me about that. So I really wasn't even planning on watching the halftime show, but it just as things had just allowed it, then it was just like I think I turned it on like almost done very end of the second quarter. So just enough time to actually catch the performance. So I hadn't gone back and really done any super high analysis of it, because I kind of just I understood it from I wouldn't say I saw every Easter egg, but I kind of could see the gist and who his audience was. To me, hip hop is all about the audience. Like, who are you speaking to? So when we're talking about Drake's last album, I think it was more for young men. I think it was music. He made it music for women who, like, just women who kind of have it on in the background, but the lyrics were kind of more geared towards young men were who were looking for women, I guess. So it's I know that to give a whole breakdown of that would would be kind of would take some time, but like I don't think it's bad music. Like, I've never thought. I always think Drake makes, to me, I always say he makes pretty much perfect music when it comes to what people actually want to hear. But then sometimes what you want to hear isn't what exactly you need to hear. And I think Kendrick had a little bit more of the what you need to hear right now, just in terms of mindset wise. Is dealing with a lot of internal struggles that people go through, and I'm not speaking specifically on music that he was performing at the Super Bowl. I'm just talking about his music in general. And yeah, so ultimately, I think he did a good job on the Super Bowl. Um, I wouldn't say it was my personal favorite, which like I said, I'm not really even the biggest Super Bowl watcher fan. Like, so at first it was you know, I wasn't really necessarily looking for my personal enjoyment. I was looking from the perspective of how most people would take it, or how most people would experience it, and from that perspective, I would have said it was a little bit underwhelming. But like, at the same time, I already know there's a lot more that's going into, like, because I didn't see the game over in the crowd at the first time, so there was a lot of things that I missed as just a regular casual viewer, first time around, and never going back to do any analyzing of it. It was I think that people, compared to like when the Weeknd was performing there, and had like the Weeknd had like a whole his whole album was leading up to the Super Bowl moment. So it was a little bit more of a different show from my perspective in terms of like what that meant. And so I was a little bit more engaged for his performance. Usher was doing a lot prior to it. And I'm not saying Kendrick wasn't doing it, because he had the whole album release and he performed that music at the Super Bowl. But I'm just saying, in terms of the effort that went into the whole production, like, I think people were expecting it to have bands and stuff. And I think, from if I was looking at it from I think that would have made it more palatable for the average listener or the average watcher of the Super Bowl in general or halftime show. So I think it was, like I said, I think it was a great performance. Didn't knock me off my feet personally, but yeah, he did his thing.
That was a very that was a very good um, commentary, and at the very end, you addressed some of the pushback that I heard from people who didn't necessarily feel wowed by the performance.
Mm.
It just so happens that a number of the people who were not wowed by the performance were also people who struggle with lift every voice and sing being performed. What I will say is that I totally agree that with Kendrick not being one of the rappers that has a message that glorifies anything particularly negative, it's I thought it was a good thing that he was chosen to lead the way. Of course, one of the things that I'm interested in is the people or the person responsible for him getting this shot. And kind of going back to the show where we were talking about Nico Harris and the bold move that he made
Mm.
in the NBA, it makes me curious about how much Kendrick's performance and being given the platform, how much it could mean for the future of hip hop.
Mm.
So very, very, very interesting times. I thought I agree with you in that I wasn't knocked off my feet like some people were by the performance. I'd have to agree that there were things that probably could have been done differently. But symbolically, I think it could be very, very important for hip hop moving forward that he was chosen with the kind of messaging that he seeks to put out. So
Right. And I know you had a hard stop at 8:30, but the last thing was you remember when we were showing that video where it was saying Drake was created to be king, and then they were saying Kendrick was on a similar path. So for me, I'm not so gung ho about it because things will have a way of acting like you were the one who chose this, or make you think that
wow.
you were the one who was like, oh yeah, we got this here, we did this. So I'm just a little bit more hesitant in the direction
Wow.
that things are going because I'm seeing the the aim to get Drake out of here. So I can see that. So now I just don't personally trust too much, even when it comes to hip hop in general. Like I
So
said,
good, man.
so I always just employ people to, you know, it's a win, but yeah, like you said, who set this win up, and what does
And
it mean
why?
exactly? Why? And those are the questions that we have to keep in the forefront of our minds as we're seeing who's continued to be pushed out in front of us. And there's no hate on Kendrick. I'm just like I said, I don't think a lot of these artists know that where their point is. He's probably following a path or following his dreams. They just made his dreams align with theirs to some degree, or they figured out a way to make what he's doing part of things. But there's just a lot of you know, once things start rolling, it's like when you see things happening, boom, 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 you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what's going on here? So that was just
That's a very good end note. Very good end note for a lot of reasons. Yes, sir.
for sure, for sure.
Well, this was a good one, man, and
Mm-hmm.
I go away saying that we definitely need to share these broadly, and I really appreciate We the Sauce because I like the fact that there's a place where these will be housed and people can go back and look at them and hopefully tap into a piece of history, because there's some commentary. And it was interesting that, we had said as much as we said about Ye, and then the following show, we had to address him for a whole different matter. So that's what's wonderful about these shows that people can, you know,
Piece them
track
together.
the conversation, track the conversation through the shows.
And that's the
Wonderful.
value of the consistency, man. Like, the more consistent you stay, it's like the more relevant our topics are to, what's really going on right now. So, when you said, anytime you say current topics, it's never, current events. I have no problem because it's just like we're just having our normal conversation. So,
Yeah, yeah. There's so much that we didn't even get to touch on.
yeah, there's a whole mountain of stuff. So, all right, man. Appreciate you staying on, man. Thank you everybody who tuned in live, who's watched later. Remember, like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you guys next time. Have a
And
great day.
share, and
Yep.
share.
Share this, please. Yep. All right, everyone. Have a great night or a great day.